We're continuing to work on our Illuminated burning journal, and today we're going to see a lot of this come together. So we'll be starting to see what our final project is going to look like. So first of all, I want to take some just craft paint, dark green. I'm going to mix it with a little bit of distress ink in black soot, just a little bit of that, so we have like a green-black combination going. And I'm going to mix this together, but I'm going to leave some swirls so it's not totally mixed, and that way it gives us like a nice uneven finish, and that will it will age it a little bit and give it more of a distressed look. So I'm going to leave some swirls in this paint, and then I'm just going to take like a domed foam and then going to run that around the journal, and then that will give us a nice dark edge on this journal. And we're just doing this on the outside, so I'm kind of tilting it towards this front cover so that none of this goes on the inside cover. So I guess you might see a little bit of it, but for the most part this will stay on the outside cover. So we're going to give this a nice dark edge, and I'm starting with kind of like a skinny edge here, but I will go around a few times and kind of get this darker and then as thick as I feel like it needs to be. So if I feel like when this area is done, then I'll go ahead and make it thicker, but I'm going to pull that ribbon closure back so that I don't get that with paint. So one thing on this, I'm using really dark paint here, so I'm going to make sure that I let it dry so that I'm not like smudging it on different areas of this journal. So I'm going to be really careful about that. So here I'm just going back and kind of making that line a little bit thicker with this dark paint. And then after we do this dark paint, I'm going to get my gold like craft paint, and I'm going to add that to this. So we'll have a nice gold edge as well. It will be like gold on top of this darker color. And if for some reason when I'm done with all of this, if I don't like the way it looks, I'll just go over it with a different paint. So sometimes I like to just do it and see how it looks, because otherwise I really can't tell. So we're just going to go ahead and get a nice dark line around this whole journal. And then now I'm adding the gold in, and I'm also keeping the green black as well. So then I'll just keep adjusting this until it has the look that I want. But with the gold paint, I am mixing that a little bit with this green and black so that it gives it almost like a tarnished look. And I think that will really work well for just kind of blending in with this whole journal. I'm not trying to make any like stark color changes here. Just want things that will really blend in. So you can see I'm kind of blending these three colors together in a way, but as we go along, I'm going to be adding more and more gold. So now I'm adding this mixture onto the binding area of this journal, and I really need to make sure I get enough so that it gets into these cracks where where we're opening and closing this book. And if I get too much, I'm just going to wipe it down with a wet wipe and kind of pull that back a little bit. But since this has a nice green base to it, it's not too big of a deal if I get a little extra paint here and there. So now I'm just going to make sure that this is, these corners are all filled with paint and that it dries thoroughly, and then I'll go back and start adding that gold paint on top of this layer. But I do think this is really helping. It's kind of like a tattery edge here, and I think it really helps to add this paint because it emphasizes it, but it also seals it at the same time. So on this binding area, that's actually a layer of wax paper, and I do like how it looks, and I especially like that it looks different after we kind of do this edging. I think it looks really nice. And we'll be putting things on top of this, but I do think at this point, I think it looks really neat. So I'm going to make sure that I get these edges pretty thick here on this binding area. And then at some point I have like book corners that are like filigree metal, and I'm going to be gluing those onto like the cover and the back of this book. So that's why in the corners I'm kind of getting a little bit of extra color going here. So I just dried that down with my heat tool, and then now I'm going to go back in with some of this gold. And again, still mixing it with a little bit of that green and black just to make sure that it is not like super bright golds. But I just keep working until it kind of looks right to me, and then I'll stop and let it dry completely. So I'm doing a combination of just letting it dry and then also using my heat tool as well. So this is a pretty bright gold craft paint, but when I'm mixing it a little bit, it really does turn into like a tarnished gold. So that's really working for me as far as the color that I was looking for and the finish I was looking for. So now I'm gonna use just the plain bright golds and go around this die cut bird. So this bird was part of a set from the Junk Journal Studio on Etsy, and I believe it's called like Bird Fussy Cuts. And so I love this set because it goes from really small birds, like a whole bunch on one page, and then it goes to like this size, like the really large birds. But I find that I use birds a lot in my journals, so it kind of gives me like all the sizes in between. And so this set really works out well. So I'm getting all these different areas, and then if there's like a white area, I'm just kind of washing that with this gold paint. But I did leave a little bit of a white edge all the way around, so because I knew I was going to be adding gold to the edge of that bird. So now I'm going to take another Junk Journal Studio digital. This is from the Botanical collection, and it's like the base collection that is green and tan. And I just have like some of these printouts that are so pretty, but I just took a little square and put it on this binding area. It's about an inch square. And I'm just putting it on the top and the bottom and gluing this. I felt like it needed kind of like an end on both sides. And it's bringing in like a little bit of blue. And I feel like that's nice. It kind of breaks up this same color scheme going on. So I feel like it gives it a nice little accent here. And I'll be adding more to this area later. But for now, I think it's looking really nice. So now I'm adding those eyelets, and I set on my crocodile, I set the depth. So when I punched both holes, top and bottom right in the center, they're at the exact same depth. And then now when I punch my other two holes, then they're all, in a line, like in a parallel line. And I'm just eyeballing this, even though I probably should be measuring this, just like between the first eyelet here and the edge. I'm not too good at eyeballing these eyelets, and I really should measure more carefully, but I tend to just think, oh, it'll be good enough, and I'll go ahead and do it. But now I'm going to set these 3 on the bottom. So initially I had wanted to do like 4 eyelets, but it just wouldn't fit. So 3 fits a lot better. And this will work out just fine. And then I'm going to do the same thing at the top of the journal. I'll add these other 2 eyelets. And I have 2 crocodiles, so one is set to an 1/8, and I just put like washi tape around the handle. And then this one is like the 3/16 size, but I use them a lot more because then I can just grab them. I don't have to adjust them, because for some reason adjusting that crocodile was keeping me from using it. And I figure I love this tool so much that it's okay to buy like 2 of them and have 2 of them. So I also have the Big Bite as well, and I use that one too. So I love this tool so much. It's just, for me, like I never would have done eyelets unless I had a tool like this. So really love that. So now we're going to add the elastics. And as far as buying elastic, I have sewing elastic that is in black. It's like a black cording elastic, and I would guess they also sell that in white. But now this elastic is in like the jewelry section of a craft store, and I'm getting mine generally from Michael's, or I did get it from Joann's. But basically in the beading section, you'll have elastic that's for like making bracelets or whatever. And there's a lot more color variation. Usually you can get like a card that has like 5 or 6 different colors. And then also I get elastic from the kids section, and those are usually like much brighter colors. So I do get elastic from all those different places. And I think the sewing elastic is probably the sturdiest and best. And so I do use that quite a bit. But in this case, I love being able to grab a color that kind of matches the journal. So I'm only doing these long lines of elastic on the inside, and then on the outside I'm just kind of feeding them or leapfrogging them through those eyelets. So no like long strands on the outside. But this way I can just kind of pop them into whatever area I need them to be. Like here I need to tie it off. I'm at like the end of my elastic. And you want to do this tight, but you want to do it taut, but not tight. And you don't want it loose. But you want it to be, that they kind of twang when you pull back on them. So now I'm just going to start a new line here. And I'm just going from one eyelet to the next until I have like 3 or 4 strings going here. And you can go from like the first one to the third one. You don't have to go like one at a time or anything. But that way, I string them on the inside and the outside. But as far as these long lines of elastic, that's only on the inside. But you do need to be on the same line in order to like tie it off. So that's what I'm doing now. And then I'm going to put a dot of glue on each of these knots just to make sure they hold extra well. And then I'm going to cut off these tails. And so I'm just going to put a piece of paper under here and let them dry. And now we're going to work on that bird. So I'm just taking some flat back pearls from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just adding these onto that bird's breast area. And I'm just trying to put them where there's no detail, like printed detail there, because I still want to be able to see the detail on this bird. But I really like these pearls. I have to add a little bit of glue to them. If I just use the sticky stuff, they don't stay on. But I think that's really nice. I can use things from the Dollar Tree on this too. So now I'm just using stickles. It's like a champagne gold, but it is a metallic. And it gives it a little dimension and a little bit of metallic here as well. So I'm just going to keep adding things to this bird. So these are like little metallic sticky back jewels. I'm just going to add a couple lines of these dark colors here in this bird. A little necklace for the bird. But I do want to keep a lot of the detail so you can see that. I don't want to go too overboard with these jewels. But I do think eventually I want to add something to those leaves as well. But I looked in what I have and I don't have anything that quite matches, so I might have to work on something for that. So I'm just going to add a couple more pearls here. And I think I'm sticking them to me better than the bird, but I'll eventually get that worked out. So now I'm going to glue this bird onto the front of the journal, and I just kind of moved it around a few places to see where I thought it looked best. And then I have this embellishment, which is basically a green jewel from Prima that was on a brad, but that fell off. So I'm just going to put this on a Tim Holtz like keyhole. And it's a kind of a modern looking keyhole, so that's why I'm glad to be covering this up with a jewel. I probably won't use this, but if I'm putting the jewel on it, it looks older now, so really like that combination. And now I'm just adding some more like sticky backed jewels onto here and making sure they look right, they look spaced out okay. This is like a peachy tone, and I really love these. I think this is another Jolie's boutique, and I don't know if that company is still in business. I bought these years ago at Joann's, but I love everything they put out. I think it's really beautiful. So I'm just going to take another embellishment here that I bought from Tuesday Morning. So I'm using all these things I've gotten over the years, and I'm so glad to be able to pull these out and have things that I can use. But I just think this is perfect for this bird's necklace. Put a nice diamond on this bird's necklace. But I'm going to go ahead and glue that down really well. I don't want to lose that. Okay, so there's one more step that I want to do in this section of our birding journal. So I'm going to take these kind of big metal hinges and I'm just going to glue the first half of them on, and that way I can close it. Like when this is dry, I can close the journal and make sure it's all lined up okay before I glue the second half. So right now I'm just going to glue that first half, and then I'll make sure that everything can close properly. But I've done this before where I'll glue both halves and then I can't get the journal shut or I can't get it back open. So I've kind of learned to just do half of it, let it dry, and then figure out the second half, you know, in a different time. But I'm going to glue these down pretty heavily. This is kind of like a nice heavy hinge. And I do think these might be Tim Holtz as well. So I have an embellishment drawer where I have things I have picked up over the years. So it's kind of nice to be able to pull these out and use these. And they're kind of all coordinating with each other, which I think is pretty nice. So this is our last step on this journal. I'm so grateful for this section. We'll have the next one where we'll work on more. But I'm so grateful that you're here and watching. And if this is the kind of thing that you like, gardening and gardening projects and things with birds and flowers, I would love to have you subscribe, and we'll do more of these things together. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.